And I want to wish each and every one of you a good Kodesh. Shvat is Shenishma B'Sovas Tovis. Shemus B'Sovas Tovis. That's Shvat. We should hear good news. Davening every minute to hear more and more good news. Not to Chalil hear any bad news, the only good news. I want to learn something on a deeper level tonight. The time that we're in has many, many faces. To understand the time that we're in. Right now, we just left Teves, and we just entered into Shvat. But throughout this entire Kufa, since Shmini Atzeres, since October 7th, I think all of our tefillas could be summed up in 3 words: Yeshuascha kivisi Hashem. Yeshuascha kivisi Hashem. In the davening, what we say, Ki Yeshuascha kivina kol hayom. That we're waiting, Hashem, we're waiting and we're longing for the salvation. Ki Yeshuascha kivisi kol hayom, Yeshuascha kivisi Hashem. Now the makor, of course, of these words, Yeshuascha kivisi Hashem, we just learned a couple of weeks ago, at the end of Bereshis, it's the bracha of Yaakov Avinu to Shevet Dan. Before Yaakov Avinu died, he gave a bracha. And what brought that bracha to Yaakov Avinu's lips, Rashi explains from Chazal, that Yaakov Avinu was looking far into the future. And this Nabe Shianaku Plishtim Es Einov, he saw one of the most famous members of Shevet Dan, Shimshon Hagiba. And Yaakov Avinu saw in the future that his eyes were going to be gorged, that the Plishtim were going to take his eyes out. B'soifer Leimar, and he saw that Shimshon was going to cry out to Hashem, Zachreni na, v'chaskeni na af hapam. Hashem, remember me and give me strength this one time. This time, give me strength. In other words, he saw Shimshon that day being mocked and ridiculed by the Plishtim, who took the great hero and the great warrior. You all know the story. And the last words of Shimshon, Zachreni na v'chaskeni na af hapam. And the Medrash says, Yaakov Avinu roa also. Yaakov Avinu looked in the future and he saw the beginning of Shimshon. He saw all that Shimshon was doing. And Yaakov Avinu was convinced, Shehu Melech HaMashiach. Yaakov Avinu believed that this is the one, that this is Melech HaMashiach. And Kevin Shiro Meis, since then Yaakov saw the death of Shimshon in the future, Kevin Shiro Shemeis, Miad Omar, Yaakov Avinu said, Li Yeshuascha kivisi Hashem. Hashem, I long for your salvation. It's Rashi and the Medrash. And this is the bracha of Shevet Dan. Li Yeshuascha kivisi Hashem. It was the vision of Shimshon being tortured, and then Shimshon davening for that strength that he received from Hashem, and giving his life up. So it would seem from here, quite clear, that the whole muhus, the essence of this shevet, of this tribe, of Shevet Dan, is the midah of tzipi liyeshuv, the longing for salvation, of tzipi liyeshuv. In a place of terrible, terrible Yeush, even after Yeush. Because remember, Yaakov believed that this was the ultimate salvation, that Shimshon was Mashiach. And it didn't work out. And he saw Shimshon die. And afterwards he said, turning to his son, and as a bracha to Dan, the Shevet Dan, he said, Yeshuascha kivisi Hashem. So somehow to have faith and hope when things seem to be hopeless, when it seems that all hope is gone. This is the midah of Shevet Dan. Now, how do we understand this? And how is this nogea to us? So what I'm going to explain now is based upon the teachings of one of the great mashpiyim of our generation, who I was able to spend some time with. Actually, we did. Rav Moshe Weinberger, and with some additional ha'aris to try to understand what the tzaddik was saying, but it's based upon his teachings. This entire period of time, as you all know, the winter time is called in halacha Tkufas Teves. Tkufas Teves, the Tkufa of Teves. And according to the Rizal and the Vilna Gaon, the Degel Machne Dan, you know, that when we encamped in the desert, we were divided by certain camps, and within each camp there was that flag and the three Shvatim. So the Degel Machne Dan, the flag of the camp of Dan, corresponds to the 3 months of Teves, Shvat, and Asher. Teves is Keneged Shevet Dan. The month that we just finished is Shevet Dan. That's Teves. Shvat, that we now entered, is Asher. And the month of Adar is Naphtali. And these were encamped together, corresponding to this time of the winter that's difficult. It's called Tkufis Teves. It's a difficult time. In the Slichas of Asar B'Teves, we say Yerach Teves Ma'od L'Kisipo. This time of Teves, the month of Teves, the period of the winter, Ma'od L'Kisipo, which means that we suffer terribly. L'Kisi means there were terrible things that were taken from us and that we're missing and so on. And the Zohar Kodesh says that during this time of the year, B'chlal, there's a Dina Kasha Shar Ba'alma. It's a difficult time of din. Difficult time of din. And within that camp of Degel Machne Dan corresponds to the most difficult time, which is Teves itself. And Chazal tell us that there are 4 ruchos, there are 4 directions, and Tzafon, the north, is Misham Choshech Yod Sela Olam, the darkest. Of course, where there's the most darkness and the longest period of darkness is the north. Misham Choshech Yod Sela Olam, Ukinegdon Shevet Dan. And Shevet Dan corresponds to that Ruach, the north, darkness. Chazal say why? Lama? Shehu Hechshich Ha'olam B'Avodah Zarah. Because Shevet Dan brought terrible darkness to the world with its Avodah Zarah, with their idol worship. Now what's that talking about? What that's referring to? Chazal speak of Dan as being Yorud Shebeshvatim, the lowest of all the Shvatim. And the underlying reason for that, where it began, was what we're told in Sefer Shoftim, that there was a Pesel Micha, there was this type of idolatry of Avodah Zarah, Pesel Micha, that was built and carried by this person, Micha from Shevet Dan, who actually carried this Pesel, who carried this idol through Yamsuf. When we went through the ocean by Kriyas Yamsuf, Micha from Shevet Dan was carrying this Avodah Zarah. And in the end, this Avodah Zarah somehow made its way to Eretz Yisrael. It was not far from Mishkan Shiloh. I'm sure many of you have been by Shiloh. Not far, we have ruins of the Mishkan Shiloh. And this Pesel, this Avodah Zarah, had a temple that was built for it by Jews. The high priest, the Kohen of that temple, was actually Yohanan ben Gershon, was the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu. So if you have heard stories about kids at risk, and Lo Aleinu, some chaver that are having a hard time with Yiddishkeit, Moshe Rabbeinu's Einikel, Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson, was the high priest of Pesel Micha, this Avodah Zarah. And Chazal tell us that the smoke would rise from that Avodah Zarah, from that temple, and it would ascend, and it would mix. It's hard to say. The smoke would mix with the smoke that was coming from the Mishkan of Shiloh, from the sacrifices that were being brought to Hashem in Shiloh. In other words, we're talking about a very painful open wound in the history of the Jewish people. And it wasn't by accident that this took place in the world of Sheva Dan. Chazal say, Lama Nikra Shmo Yarden. Chazal ask, why is the river called Yarden? This river that they're all screaming about from the river to the sea. Why is it? Not that the idiots on campus know what river they don't know any of that stuff. They think it's the Mississippi or something. But why is it called Yarden? Why is it called Yarden? Lama Nikra Shmo Yarden. Now, in the word Yarden, you could hear what? You could hear din. And you could hear dan. So Chazal say, Lama Nikra Shmo Yarden, Sheyored Midan. Because it descended, the Jordan came forth from that territory, from Dan. In other words, when you look at the map of ancient Eretz Yisrael, that's where we lived in those times, when you look at the map of Eretz Yisrael, the Kav HaGvul, the border of the Yarden, and the line, the Kav HaGvul that went from the Yarden to Sheva Dan, was that which divided between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, inside and outside. So Shevet Dan was actually located by that place, Yarden, Dan, Din, by that place, like the last frontier. The last frontier separating between inside Eretz Yisrael and outside of Eretz Yisrael. That's where there would be a fence these days, a fence separating between inside and outside, and that's the place of Dan. And this lowest of the Shvatim, I didn't say, the Chazal say, Yorud, from the word Laredes, Yarden, Yorud, Dan, Din, it's all the same. This lowest of the Shvatim was at the very edge of the Jewish people. In other words, one more step and you're no longer part of us. That's where they were located. One more step, you're just barely inside. Which, it's not just about the geography, it means existentially. That Dan lived at the edge of the Jewish people. The final frontier, the last, the end, the lowest part of Am Yisrael. A little bit further, Kvar Lo Yehudi. It's no longer Jewish. A little bit further. At the border of their Yiddishkeit. That's how they lived. At the border of Yiddishkeit, and physically at the border. That's how they lived. So now we have to come back to this bracha of Yeshuascha Kivisi Hashem that we began with. So we need to understand what seems to be, what Rav Moshe Shapiro explains, is what seems to be happening here is that the secret of the strength and the holiness of Shevet Dan, despite all of its shortcomings, is that even though Shevet Dan is the lowest Shevet, and it's the north, it corresponds to the northern hemisphere, the northern part of reality, which is darkness and distance and so on, and coldness, that's the north, like the North Pole. Lamrot HaKol, despite all of that, the people of Dan, Shevet Dan, wants to remain part of Am Yisrael. Doesn't want to go out, doesn't want to leave, refuses to leave, and is filled with this hope of the future that's called the Yeshuascha Kivisi Hashem. I haven't stopped hoping. I hope. I want to be able to change. I want to be able to remain. I don't want to be outside of Eretz Yisrael. I don't want to be outside of Am Yisrael. So Shevet Dan is the embodiment of Rabbi Nachman's famous sentence of Ein Shum Yesh Ba'olam Klal. that a Jew should never ever give up wanting to be better. That's the whole Metzias of this Shevet. And we received from Shevet Dan this midah of the Yisroel Kivisi Hashem, or Ki Eshev B'choshech, even though I dwell in darkness, Hashem or Li, I'm still trying to hold on to Hashem's light, whatever bit I can. This is the midah. Rav Shapir explains that this is the midah of Shevet Dan. Mit Avodah Zarah, with all of the terrible, disgusting things that was going on through this Shevet, Ich bleib Yid. I remain a Jew, and I don't want to give up trying. I still dream of one day being better. I want to be better. I hope to be better. Like there's a famous story, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but there's a famous story that took place in Moscow during the darkest time of the beginnings of communism, where there was a whole bris with Reb Chaim Berlin, who was the Rav in Moscow at that time. The Jews had to live in a certain quarter, in a certain area there. They weren't allowed to go into the other, but there was a high-ranking soldier, and the wife of this high-ranking soldier, they wanted to have a bris. They had a baby, and the baby was a Jewish baby, even though they were making believe they weren't Jewish. They were pretending they weren't Jewish, and they risked their lives, and they snuck out from this to go to the Jewish place, to the Jewish section, to speak to Reb Chaim Berlin, and they asked him if he can come to give a bris to their baby. And Reb Chaim Berlin had to risk his life, and they risked their lives, and they came there and they gave a bris to this baby. And Reb Chaim Berlin asked, I'm sure you heard, it's a famous story. Reb Chaim Berlin asked, why did you risk your life? You had nothing to do. You're pretending you live like non-Jews. Why did you do this? Your whole life, you're living as not. So he said that I'm right now in this place for whatever reason, but I don't know what's going to be with my son, and I hope, maybe still one day he'll come back. That's what he said. So I can't right now, but I want at least my kid should be gemalt. He should have a bris. And Reb Chaim Berlin said about this, the words from Shir Hashem, Einayich Yonim. You're the eyes of a dove, because when the husband and wife, when the chas and kala, when the male and female dove, when they fly, Chazal tell us that they always look to see that they shouldn't be far from each other. They always are looking to make sure that they're near each other, near enough that they shouldn't be too far to be separated. So this midah is the midah of tzipis Yeshua, the Yeshua Kivisi Hashem. So when Chazal is saying this, Nabe Yaakov had this nevuah, sheyinakru plishtim eseinav, that the Palestinians would gorge out his eyes, that the plishtim would take out his eyes, they would blind him, and at the end he would scream out, even though you know that Shimshon behaved in certain ways that are not what we would want for our children. Without going into the details, I'm sure you all know the story. He was a great person, but he was a very flawed person on his madrega. He was very flawed. And at the end, those Shimshons cried out, Zachreni na v'chaskeni na af hapam. Hashem, I'm asking, remember me, despite all that I've done. Zachreni na v'chaskeni na af hapam. So this longing of Shimshon symbolizes the whole mohus of Shevet Dan, that despite the fact that the members of that tribe, just like many Jews now and always, are being pulled, like that Russian soldier in Moscow, being pulled outside, being pulled away from Eretz Yisrael, being pulled away from Am Yisrael. Somehow, at the border, right at the border, Shevet Dan says, Chaskeni, strengthen me, achapam, zachreni na, chaskeni na, afapam, to give me the strength not to get lost, not to drift away in the darkness from Am Yisrael, not to lose my connection because of the winter and the plishtim who are making fun and mocking me and taking out my eyes. I still want to be a Jew. That longing remains within me, even though I don't know how to live that way. And this all comes from the bracha and the tefillah of the Zaidi, of the Elta Zaidi of Shimshon HaGibor, and the father of Dan himself and of Shevet Dan, Yaakov Avinu, when he gave the bracha, Yeshuasa ki visi Hashem, Yeshuasa ki visi Hashem. And it's more than that. Let's go now all the way to the end of the Torah, where once again there's a bracha for Shevet Dan. We always have to compare the brachas of Yaakov Avinu in Vayechi to the brachas of Moshe Rabbeinu in Zois HaBrach. So Moshe Rabbeinu's bracha to Shevet Dan is Uladon Amar, Dan Gur Aryeh. Does that sound familiar? Because there's another Shevet, Yehuda also has that, right? Dan Gur Aryeh Yizanek min habasha. Yizanek means to leap, to jump. So Dan is compared to a lion cub that's crouching, a Gur Aryeh, ready to pounce, ready to jump. Yizanek min habasha. Now this bracha of Gur Aryeh is also the bracha of Yehuda. Yehuda is considered to be the highest of all the Shvat. Yehuda is Malchus. Yehuda has the Shem, is the only Shem that has the name of Hashem. Right? It's the Shem Havai. Shem Yukevavke is Yehuda. So Yehuda embodies the world of Kedusha. It's the world of Kedusha. That's Yehuda. Dan has the same bracha. Yehuda is Gur Aryeh, and Dan is Gur Aryeh. One is in the world of Kedusha, that's Yehuda, the highest Shevet. And Dan is, Yehuda is Yushalayim, or Yehuda, and Dan is just at the border, just at the edge of the Yiddishkeit, the lowest of the Shvatim, the same words, Gur Aryeh, the lion cub. The chiluk is that by Dan, the words are Yizanek min habashan. And Rashi says, Ma zinuk zeh yotzi mimakim echad v'nechlek l'shnei makaymes. Zinuk means that you jump from one place and you land in a different place. So it says about Dan, Yizanek min habashan, Bashan is where they lived, Yizanek min habashan, to jump and to leap. Min habashan, Rashi, Ma zinuk zeh yotzi mimakim echad v'nechlek l'shnei makaymes. Kach shivta shadan, not luchelik b'shnei makaymes. So too, the tribe of Dan was not luchelik in two distant places. Without going again into geography, look at the map. That's what Rashi says. So what Rav Moshe Shapiro explains is that what's unique about Shevet Dan is that Shevet Dan finds itself in one place, but it wants to jump to another place. That's it. It's in one place, but it's crouched and ready and wants to be able to yizanek. Yizanek is a real leap. Yizanek min habasham, to jump to another place. In other words, lo tov lo b'makom shenimtza. He's not happy. I'm in this place right now. Av lo tov li kan. But I'm not happy being in this place. I don't want to be this place. I want to get out of this place. There's not one of us who's sitting here right now. We should all live till 120 in good health with our families and all Jewish people. There's not one of us that expects to die in Woodmere. God forbid. I'm not talking about just being buried because he bought some chaylik over there. I'm saying this is not. Zelo makom shalano. I've been talking about this the whole tkufa and before also. We're not happy being in this place. I was at the chasna. We were at a chasna last night of someone who I'm very, very close to, who was raised in a very religious home, but for many, many reasons, mostly that home he was raised in, went completely away. And we were dancing last night at the chasna. He married a wonderful Jewish girl, and it could have gone in a very different way. But this particular person, who I already know for years, for the past 7 or so years, was always Yizanik min habashan. He's crouched and ready to jump back. He loves learning Torah. We were always talking Torah. And it's hard for him because there are things that he went through that make it very, very difficult for him to even put on a pair of tefillin or to keep Shabbos because of what happened to him. Terrible things happened to him. And it's hard for him. But last night he exploded. He was like a yeshiva bar with all the singing and the rikudim and He wanted everything to be 100% according to Allah. And I was Zaychtiv Masad Kedushin. And he wanted everything. He was asking all different shilas. It should be 100% Kedash Kedin, because that's who he expects to be. He's not ready for it yet. He's on his way. But he's in a place that's called Sipis Li Yeshua. Li Yeshua Ascha Kivisi Kol Hayom. Ki Li Yeshua Ascha Kivina Kol Hayom. Li Yeshua Ascha Kivisi Hashem. And that's called Dan Gur Arya Yizanek in Habasha, jumping and leaping. It's more than that. It's dafka because you're in a place that you're not happy being in. That generates within you even the greater longing to leave. It's because of the choshech. Gam ki Aish v'choshech Hashem orli. Hashem orli. To go to something much greater, something much bigger. Dan is holding on desperately, not to slip over the Jordan. You understand? Mm-hmm. Not to slip into enemy territory. Not to slip into the world that's bachutz, that's outside. But at the same time, Dan was filled with all kinds of taivas, Avodah Zarah, and strange things, and we can't understand. But Dan held strong to that hope and that belief that one day I'm going to be in the Beis HaMikdash. I'm not going to let myself slip off the cliff to the other side of the Jordan, to the other side of the Yarden, into Chutz La'aretz. So now let's get ready. Let's try to get towards the end. There's a wondrous name by which the Jewish people are called in Sefer Zechariah in the 9th capital. In the 9th parak of Sefer Zechariah, the pasuk says the following: Shuvu lebitzoram asirei hatikva. Return to the fortress. Fortress, our place, Yerushalayim. Return to the fortress. Shuvu lebitzoram asirei hatikva means prisoners of hope. Asirei hatikva, prisoners of hope. Gam hayom magimishna asivlach. Today too, there's a second announcement. I will return to you. So Hashem is promising, you who are called prisoners of hope. Hashem says, I promise you, I will return to you. That's the pasuk in Zechariah. Asiri hatikva, prisoner of hope, means that the definition of a Jew, the teva of a Jew, is that he must hope. There's nothing that's as goyish, as non-Jewish, as giving up hope. And that's why we're here. And all of our enemies are gone. And this latest one, they're going to be gone. And we're going to be here till the end and enjoy beyond that. Because we're prisoners of hope. Prisoner, asiri hatikva. If the Jewish people would lose hope, hakol ne'avad. There would be no way for us to continue. It would have been done a long time ago. So, what we have seen now, and is the story really of Shimshon HaGibor, whose entire confrontation was with the ancient Plishtim, Philistines, Palestinians. Not that these Palestinians are descendants of those, but they're Rishonim also. And they like to dray around the neighborhood. This koach of the Jewish people as a people, even Jews who are so far removed from Shabbos and from mitzvahs, and we've been all seeing different clips, different writings, different songs by Jews who you would say, looking at them, you would say, he looks like he's part of Shevet Dan. You know, head to toe, tattoos. Today, someone sent me just a few hours ago a clip of a soldier with a long ponytail. I'll tell you a little bit about that. Maybe you didn't see it yet. I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. All of these who seem to be members of Shevet Dan, who have been carrying around for their lifetimes, not the Gemara and not the Tals and Tefillin, but a little Pesel Micha. Whatever that Pesel Micha is, the equivalent of in our time, but carrying around the Pesel Micha, not carrying around above a Kama, above Mitzvah, carrying around the Pesel Micha. All of this chevra. And there's been an unbelievable gilui, a revelation that's unfolded over these few months, that these Jews are holding on to the bracha of Yaakov Avinu, desperately holding on to the bracha of the old man, the bracha of when he saw Shimshon, he saw the future, and he saw that there was going to come a time where Shimshon was going to be mocked and tormented. The pasuk says, "Don yadin amoy ka'achad shiftei Yisrael" in Vaychi, and Rashi says over there, "Yinkaim nikmas amoy miplishtim," that Shimshon left the world taking revenge from the Palestinians. Yinkaim, and Yaakov saw this. Yinkaim nikmas amo miplishtim. That Davka, these Jews, the descendants of Dan, the Shimshon Hagibas, the Chevra, this Chevra, again, all different types, but many of them are unfortunately seeing every day frum boys that are also, doesn't make a difference, they're Jews, they're getting killed, but we see a lot of frum Chevra. The frum Chevra signed up for the most chashuv, jobs in the army, companies. But that these Jews, Yaakov saw Yinkaim Nikmas Almay Meplishtim, and think about how these Asirei Hatikva, prisoners of hope, just like Shimshon was by himself. Shimshon, didn't have an army. He was like a lone soldier, Shimshon. He didn't have anybody. The whole story of Shimshon is Shimshon against the Plishtim. Just Shimshon against the Plishtim. He didn't have an army or anybody helping him or supporting him. And that's why Yaakov saw in this person like a Mashiach Tzidkeinu. Because the Indian of Mashiach Tzidkeinu is that Mashiach Tzidkeinu feels for these Jews. Mashiach Tzidkeinu has a special feeling, davka, for those Jews who are left behind, and those Jews who are in a low place, and those Jews who have fallen. The whole Indian of Mashiach is to pick up Am Yisrael. I think I told you a story recently about the Lubavitcher Rebbe Susi Elenu, where there was somebody. It's a whole story. I told it to you, but I'll just remind you that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there was somebody that he got to the Rebbe's office and it was already past the time that you can go in. It was years ago. And the Rebbe was still seeing people, Yechidus, and he couldn't get in. He missed the time, but it was it was an emergency for some family that he was a shliach for in Arkansas or something. So this chassid didn't know what to do. So he wrote the note he wrote for the Rebbe, but he couldn't get in anymore because they already locked the door. Rabbi Groner or whoever was that, maybe that was Rabbi Chodek, I don't know, already locked the door. So he couldn't get in. Yechidus was done for the night. It was like 3 a.m, and it was done. So he didn't know what to do. So he put the note by the doorknob. He slipped into the door, and he assumed that the secretary, I think maybe it was Rabbi Groner or Rabbi Klein, one of the secretaries, he assumed that the secretary was going to go and to open the door for the Rebbe, was going to take the note and hope that he was going to see the note and give it to the Rebbe. But to his horror, the shliach was standing there, and the door opens, and the note fell on the floor, and it was the Rabbi. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe bent down to pick up the note. This poor guy, I didn't know what to do with himself. And he ran away. And he wrote a letter right afterwards to the Lubavitcher Rebbe apologizing. I never thought the Rebbe was going to open the door, and that I made the Rebbe bend down. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote back to him saying, you should know that My whole existence in this world is for one thing, is to bend down and pick up Jews. It's my whole existence. It's just to bend down and to pick up those who have fallen. So Mashiach, that's a big qualification. That's like the main thing on the resume of Mashiach, is that he has a certain feeling for the Jews have done. Not that he doesn't love all Jews, but for these Jews who live at the border, and they're in this state of Yizanik min Havash, and they're crouched, and they're ready to jump back, they just don't know how. Like all these kids that they get off the derech, they're all gur aryes, all Yizanik min Havash, and they just don't know how, and they're afraid, and they feel that the plishtim are making fun of them. They feel low and they feel embarrassed. And you know that Shimshon's name means shemesh. It means sunlight. It means davke for everything to be clear and sunny. So that's the name Shimshon is shemesh. And the plishtim davke took out his eyes. Or Einav, they gorged at his eyes, and they made fun of him. Now, in earlier times, the Plishtim were terrified. The Palestinians were terrified of the Jew, and we know that Shimshon single-handedly made a churban of the Plishtim. And now suddenly October 7th comes, and everything turns around. And the Plishtim are making chayzik of the Jewish people, are making chayzik of Shimshon. And the one whose name means light and sunshine is brought into terrible, terrible darkness. And they were sitting there drinking and eating and drinking and doing disgusting things, and all pointing and laughing at what they had brought upon this Jew who was the shofet, who was the leader of the Jewish people. And what they had brought upon the Jewish people. And Shimshon was standing there, tied up to the story. He was tied up to the Seder HaBinyan, the pillars, whatever it was, the foundations. He was tied up over there. And he was Yizanik min Habashan. And he said, Zachreini na, v'chaskeni na achapam. I didn't tell you the words after that. V'inokmam nekam achas mishtei enemy plishta. And Hashem strengthened me this last time so that I could take revenge for my eyes. I could take revenge from the plishtim, from the Palestinians. So from that terrible, terrible low place that he was in, and that everything was the darkest time Shimshon Sheva done, and the Plishtim were making chayzik of the Jewish people, Shimshon jumped to another place. And he left the world in such a way, destroying our enemies. And he jumped to another place, to his place, Nadam Hava, where Shimshon is, that we can't even be masig who he was and who he is. We don't know anything about. But Shimshon jumped in that other place. So here's where we come to the title that I gave to the shir, that it was told to me that nobody knew what that meant. Hope springs eternal. That's because I spent some time when I was younger, much younger, studying English literature, and there was one of the most famous poems, English poems that was ever written back in the 1730s, was an essay on man by Alexander Pope. It's a very, very deep and brilliant. I'm not comparing Khalila to anything in Torah, but it made a huge impression on me. And those words, hope springs eternal, come from that. It's like a philosophical poem. It's about Emunah. The whole poem's about Emunah. And Madrega, that a person like that can understand. He was a very, very deep thinker. And he was one of my favorite poets back then. And I've been thinking about those words. Hope springs eternal. So here we are. We just started Rosh Chodesh Shvat. And Rosh Chodesh Shvat means that we're leaving Teves and we're going into Shvat. We just went into Shvat. And the Svarim tell us that the sap, the sarif is beginning to rise in the trees in Eretz Yisrael. It's beginning to make its journey to fight through the ice, the cold, the darkness of the winter of Teves, and work itself back up into the trees to give life to this and to bring to the spring back into life, to bring all life back into the world. That's what's happening. That's the whole time that coming to Tu B'Shvat. It's the beginning of the Hisnoitzitzos, the beginning of light. The nights are now getting shorter. The day, sunlight, Shimshon, the Shemesh is beginning to fight back against the darkness of the night. And the days are getting longer, right? The days are starting to get longer. And the winter, even though it's still cold, we didn't have any really snow, anything cold yet, but so it's cold, but the spring is fighting to come out in the trees, and this farm tells that when a person during this time of the year of Shvat, and that's why it's called Shvat of the letters, Shmuos B'Soros Tovos or Shanishma B'Soros Tovos. It means that the good hasn't yet arrived, but we're hearing some good news. In other words, upcoming previews. That's what it means. Shmuos B'Soros Tovos, Nishma B'Soros Tovos, Shenishma B'Soros Tovos is Shvat. And when a person looks at the tree, and when he looks at the tree, he sees something that is the tree is outside. Davke, because it was so windy yesterday, there's branches all by us on our block. There are pieces of branches all over the place without any life. They fell down, and there's no leaves, there's no flowers. Everything seems to be dead, and it seems that this tree is about to let go and to say, "Ani lo yachol," and to slip over the Jordan into enemy hands, to give itself over and to say, "I can't anymore. I tried, I can't anymore." That's what it seems like. When you look at the tree, now, it's Shvat. We look at the trees, and the trees seem to have said, "I'm done, like Sheva done. I'm done. I'm finished. I can't go on. I can't go on." And something amazing happens. And it should be in a couple of weeks from now, even though it'll still be cold out. And it starts to warm up, but it's still cold out. We begin to see those first little, what do they call those little flowers that come up? I asked the same thing last time. The crocuses start to come up, those little flowers that are very courageous, and they push their way through. So it says in Tehillim, Oz Yiranu Kol Atzei Yar. Then all the trees will sing. You know, Shlomo Melech, Chazal tells that Shlomo Melech understood the language of trees. It says, Veidaber al ha'etzim, min ha'erez asher b'levonon, vad ha'ezav asher yotze b'kir. It says in Melachim Aleph in the 5th parak, that Shlomo Melech understood the language of even the mightiest trees and the little tiny little flowers, trees, that Shlomo Melech was able to understand the language. And it says in the Gemara, in Sukkah by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that he understood sichas de kolim. He understood the language of the trees, that they would speak to each other. So what is this language? So the Rashba writes in Bava Basra that the following. What does it mean that he understood sichas de kolim, to understand the language of trees? Ma hem oimim kashehem misnoidedim beruach. He understood the language of what the trees were saying when they were swaying in the wind. He understood that language of the trees. I've mentioned in the past, I remember that when we lived in Queens, so I was once sitting with our oldest daughter. At the time she was a little girl, and it was a windy night, and we were sitting on the steps, and everything was moving a lot, and she asked me why the trees are shaking so much. So I said, because it's windy outside. And she said, no. I said, no, so why are they? She still always tells me that. She says, why? So she said, the trees are davening. Because she knows that when people daven, they shock. It's true. It says, Oz Yiranu Kol Atzei Yar. Donach said that the trees are davening. And there were tzaddikim that understood the language of the trees. The Rabbi Chaim Vital says that he knows for a fact, also from the Kodesh, the Rizal, that he was able to understand the conversations, and he told him things that the trees were talking about. And that he understood the Siach HaSada. Like it says Siach HaSada, the field's called Siach HaSada. Siach means also what? Sicha. Siach HaSada. He understood the Sichos. That the Ariya Kodesh was able to understand what the trees were talking about in the blades of grass, or the trees when they were blowing in the wind and they were shaking. And that means that at the end of Teves, and now that we're beginning Shvat, and the trees are shivering in the winter, and there's yesterday there was such a strong wind, and the wind's blowing, and these trees are shaking back and forth. So when you look at the tree, you think that the tree is going to collapse, and then it's finished. But the tzaddikim revealed to us that that the trees are davening. And what are they davening? So we don't know, because we're not the Rizal, and we're not Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and we're not Shalom Melech. We don't know. But if those tzaddikim we hear, they would translate from the language of the tree, and they would hear the tree saying, Rabbi Shalom, Cheskeni Ahapam, strengthen me this one last time. I feel like I'm going to die. I don't feel that I can go on. Strengthen me that I should be able to make it through to the end of the winter, and that the spring will come, and that there'll be light, and we'll be able to sing to you Shir Chadash, we'll be able to be part of that song of Mashiach Tzidkenu. If we could hear the language of these trees as they were shaking yesterday, and we would hear the trees screaming out, Li'Yishuascha Kivisi Hashem, Li'Yishuascha Kivisi Hashem. And that's why the Gemara says in Ksubis, Asid and Kol Ilanei Swakshvitz Yisrael, Shiatanu Peiros. That all of the trees in Eretz Yisrael that don't have any fruit, that they're not fruit-giving trees, all those fruit, when Mashiach comes, they're going to bear fruit. Nemar, Ki Eitz Noseh Piryo, Te'ena V'gefen Nosnu Chelam. That every tree, all the trees of Eretz Yisrael are going to give forth all of their energy, will burst out when Mashiach comes. All of that light will burst forth when Mashiach comes. So just like an hour or two ago, one of the Chaver sent me this clip of a guy, a soldier, standing there, and I guess it's us. It looks like us. It was a chorban, and he was standing there, and holding his rifle, and he was describing where he was. He was there October 7th, and he had to hide someplace. He was 6 hours hiding somewhere, and he said that for those 6 hours there was terrible shooting and things that they were doing, the terrorists, and they were all around him, and he said that he was locked up, and he locked himself into some bathroom that he found over there, and he said that for 6 hours, all he did for 6 hours was scream out 6 words: Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. It's not religious. I'm saying he's got a long ponytail, no yarmulke. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And then, in the course of the Milchama, he went over there and he found a necklace. I don't know if it was that day or a day later, when he survived, and he found a necklace, and he shows it on the clip. And this necklace has a silver band, and it says on it, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And now he wears this the whole time, this thing on his, put it onto a necklace or something, he wears this as a necklace. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. That's the Yishuas HaKivisi Hashem. That's why we're hurting so much every single time we hear about somebody else being injured or somebody else being killed. We feel that a part of us is dying. But Ein Shum Yesh Ba'olam Klal. That there's something else that Hashem has planned, and our whole mitzvah that we received from Sheva Dan is to be able to somehow leap from the winter, leap from Kufas Teves, to jump up from the darkest darkest time. We saw that after the Holocaust, and what we're going to see now is going to be infinitely, infinitely greater than what happened at that time, and that Am Yisrael is going to jump from one place to such a different place, because this is not our place. The time has come for the winter to end, and for Hashem to hear the tefillas of all of the trees and all the Jews who have been suffering and waiting for so many years, like the trees in the winter, that we should Hashem to see the Yeshua, and it should be Keher Fayin, the Glosh V'Amitish, maybe Amen, Amen, Amen.